That Triathlon Show, episode 57. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of That Triathlon Show, the podcast presented by scientifictriathlon.com. I'm your shivering host, Michael, which we'll talk about a bit later. Today's episode is all about training for a swim run, and I just got back from my open water swim session here in Helsinki on September 7th. It's not quite that extreme, but still, it's getting pretty cold here, so that's why I'm shivering. So today's episode is about the basic structure of your swim run training program, and I'll actually talk you through the swim run program that I'm currently on, preparing for the inaugural Finnish National Championships in swimrun, which is exciting. And we'll also talk about things like how it's important to make the training really, really race specific and how to accomplish that specificity, how you can train your technical skills in swimrun, and how you should also train with the equipment that you will be using on race day. So this is a topic that has been requested by one of you listeners, most recently by David Shields. So thank you for that topic request. And to all the listeners, remember that you can always send topic requests and also guest requests for interviews to michael@scientifictriathlon.com. And that's Michael with a K. I want to mention something really quickly regarding the upcoming podcast episodes. I'm preparing for my move to Portugal, and I'm very, very time crunched. So there might be a few less interviews than usually and more solo episodes because I don't have to take the time to schedule the interview and record the interview separately and all those sorts of things. Although that being said, the amount of time I spent researching this episode would have been more than compensated for by having a guest. Anyways, I'm just falling behind on schedule for researching guests and so on. So there might be quite a few less of them now in the upcoming weeks, but there will be a few for sure, and more solo episodes. And I'll definitely go back to more regular interviews in the future and in the not very distant future at all. Before starting to discuss swimrun training, let me give you the 3-minute overview of what swimrun is for those of you who are not quite sure, even though I think that most triathletes are starting to take note of this sport. So swimrun is a long endurance event of swimming and running in multiple segments in teams of 2 in nature or wilderness. You run and swim within 10 meters of your teammate, and you go from running to swimming, running to swimming, running to swimming, etc., and you keep the same equipment and the same apparel on you at all times. You don't change from a wetsuit to running gear or anything. It's a real adventure, put simply. And Ötilö, which is the premier, I would say, race series, and they also organize the World Championships. They are what Ironman might be in terms of branding, at least in the swimrun world. They have the slogan "Unique races in unique places," and that sums it up perfectly, I think. So Ötilö, as I mentioned, the original swimrun race in the Stockholm archipelago is a 75-kilometer long swimrun, and the teams swim between 26 islands and run over these same islands. And 10 kilometers of those 75 are open water swimming, and 65 kilometers are trail running. And this whole event started from a drunken bet in 2002, where 4 people decided to start on the morning and try to get to the destination, which was one of the islands with a restaurant and a bar, 75 kilometers roughly from where they were. And the only rule was that they had to pass 3 different restaurants on the islands between the start and the finish. And the last team at the restaurant had to drink and had to pay for the food and drink that the team ahead of them had ordered for them. So it took both of the teams more than 24 hours, and they were too tired to party on arrival. This is from the Ötilö website. And they tried again the year after with the same result. And the name Swimrun was the actual Swimrun events started to slowly pop up in Stockholm and in Sweden and then spread to Finland. It was also an early adapting country. But the name Swimrun was born as late as in 2011. But now, in the last couple of years, it's been spreading really quickly, and the Brits and the French are really, really big adopters, and also more recently, America and Australia and New Zealand are following and taking this great sport up really quickly. And I'll link to a World of Swimrun map in the show notes of this episode on thattriathlonshow.com, where you can see all the locations where there are swimruns in the world right now. And that's a great map, and you can get some inspiration and see where you might be doing your next destination race, a unique race in a unique place. So, to sum it up, compared to triathlon, there's no cycling, of course, but also a difference is that you wear and carry the exact same gear and equipment in both swimming and running, like the swimrun. So you have a swimrun suit that you swim in and run in, and you have calf sleeves that add some flotation to your legs and feet, because you have to swim in your shoes as well, which can be trail running shoes, or now companies are coming out with specific swim running shoes. And instead of going from just one sport to another, and that being it, as in swim, bike, run, you go back and forth between running, swimming, and so on, with often pretty short segments, but some can be longer. Longer segments could be something like a 2 or 3K swim and 5 to 7K run. But some of the segments, as I said, are much shorter, just a couple of 100 meters of swimming or running. So let's move into the training for this episode. I've done a lot of research here, but it feels still as though I'm just barely scratching the surface of swimrun training, and there just isn't a whole lot of information or actual knowledge of how to train for swimrun out there. So I'll base this discussion on what information I've found in my research, and also on my current training program, which is just a sharp 4-week program, as that's the time that I've had between the Olympic distance nationals, which went great, by the way. I finished 10th, so I was very happy with that. And now swimrun nationals coming up on the 23rd of September. And I will give you a link to download my program on the show notes page on thattriathlonshow.com, so that you can have a look at that if you want to use it. And I'm, as I said, currently training for this swimrun, which will be the inaugural Finnish national championships on the 23rd of September. And it's in my home, sweet home, the Åland Islands, which is an archipelago in the southwest of Finland. And I'll include a link and a video to the race in the show notes. The first edition of the race was last year, and I participated and actually won it with my partner for last year. And it's a stunning, stunning race. It's just a 1 or 2 minute video, so I highly recommend that you go and watch it. This year, my partner will be Simon Brierley, who's my coach and owner of Paradise Triathlon Training. And he's the one who's written the program that I'm on, and actually he's using the same program. I've given some input to it since I know the race and the course. And I've done a swimrun before. It'll be Simon's first swimrun whatsoever. And so here's the program overview. Week 1 was basically more of a recovery week from the Olympic distance nationals, with 2 swims, 3 runs, 1 swim run, for a total of 8 hours of training. And the swims were 1 easier pool swim, tech focused, and 1 open water, which was 30 or 40 minutes, with some solid pull buoy and paddle efforts. And that's those pull buoy and paddle efforts is something that keeps repeating itself in this program. Then there was a swim run, which was 2 hours with some harder segments in it. 1 long and 3 runs. 1 long run on trails, 2 hours. 1 speed run on undulating terrain with 8 times 1K efforts. And an endurance run of 70 minutes with some efforts as well. Week 2 was 2 swims, 2 runs, and 2 swim runs. So that is actually this week that I'm in. And it will be 2 open water swims, one of which I just done, and it was freezing cold. Then 2 swim runs, 2 times 90 minutes of swim runs, with practicing transitions mostly in one, and then some harder efforts in the other. 1 long run on trails, which I did yesterday. And that had a finish fast segment of 30 minutes that I did. And then again, an endurance run of 70 minutes with some efforts. So 8.5 hours in total for week 2. Week 3 cuts back a bit since we're getting close to the race. 7 hours with 2 swims, 2 runs, and 2 swim runs again, just like the previous week. 2 open water swims. Again, some solid pool boy plus paddle efforts in the one session, and the other, same thing, but more of a continuous race effort workout. And the 2 swim runs will be 90 minutes for the first one and 75 for the other. Again, one of them will practice transitions, and one will have more intensity with some harder segments, fartlek style intervals. And then 2 endurance runs, so no long run anymore, just 70 minutes of running in both of those with some efforts, which is again fartlek style intervals. And then the final week, taper week, will be a pool swim with more of a speed component to it, and then an open water swim, some race intensity, but nothing too taxing, and 2 easy runs, 45-minute jogs with some strides, and 1 swim run the day before the race with Simon. We will be practicing together for the first time, so that's very important since it's a team sport, and you really need to have teamwork and collaboration to be effective in swimrun. So some key takeaways there. In general, it's definitely an endurance event. As you can see here, longer continuous workouts, especially on the swim side of things. As a triathlete, if you're training the way that I at least think that most triathletes should train, which is interval based in the swim, then these longer continuous workouts, and even with the efforts that are longer and with short breaks, not much at super high intensities, that's a clear difference compared to triathlon training. And for some extent, this is same for the running as well. For me, especially since I'm focusing on the Olympic distance, I've been doing a lot of workouts on the track, and now I don't anymore, thank God. I hope Simon didn't hear that. But now I still have intensity on the runs, but they will be more like a fartlek style and going on feel and having flexible recovery intervals as well. So it's definitely more of a flexible approach, and I try to do them on trails as well to do race specific intensity. There's a big focus on strength as well, both on the swim and run, with obviously the paddles on the swim and pool boy. So really working that upper body. And then for the run, trying to find as many hills and trails as possible and work that strength. Technical skills, obviously training in race equipment in the swim runs themselves and practicing transitions, and also getting used to swimming in the open water. You noticed that there were very few pool swims here. So paddle and pool boy skills are really something that I'm focusing on. And for the run part, running on trails is what requires some technical aptitude. Swimming, mostly open water swims, as I said, and also shoes. I forgot I swim in shoes, especially now that I just today got my new swimrun shoes. They are specific for swimrun by Icebug. And trying to build endurance and strength to be able to handle the load that's placed on the shoulders due to the paddles. I remember last year, I think after about 7K total, so that might have been maybe 12 or 13 or 14 of the swim segments. After that, my shoulders were really, really shot, and I just couldn't move fast anymore. And it was the same for my partner, even worse actually, but I just hadn't done enough. I hadn't trained at all for this swim run, honestly, just 2 weeks instead of 4, because I had the duathlon race nationals that year, and I had that I prioritized ahead of the swim run. So it was just a fun adventure, but that really cost me on the swim, with swimming really slowly and really not. My shoulders were completely shot after 7K or so, and there were still 3Ks of swimming total left. So that's something that definitely needs work, and I feel already that now I'm much more prepared on the swimming. So obviously there's also a difference in the type of technique that you use in swimming when you need to incorporate navigation and swimming in a wetsuit. That's the same as in triathlon, of course, but it's with the amount of swimming that we will do now, a lot of open water swimming in the gear that we'll use on race day is required. And pacing must kind of be learned again, because it's a new sort of equipment, so the same effort doesn't necessarily translate directly. We'll be working more with the upper bodies or only with the upper bodies. The legs aren't working at all. So and just trying to load those shoulders effectively and not overly, but still moving quickly, that's something that really requires that you know what pace you can sustain for how long. And finally, handling the cold temperature. I expect the temperature on race day to be between 11 and 13 degrees Celsius, which is around about 51 to 55 Fahrenheit. So this is absolutely a critical part of preparations. It's actually, I was surprised to see it, but it's exactly the same kind of temperatures that the Norseman Extreme Iron Distance race in Norway has for their typical race day water temperature, 13 to 15 degrees. So even a bit colder, actually, 2 degrees Celsius colder. And Norseman is often put on a pedestal as one of the most, the hardest, toughest races out there. So, but we will have a colder, much colder race. Obviously, we don't have to swim for as long continuously, which is a massive help. But I did a 60-minute swim today, and this was really, man, I was close to hypothermic, definitely. I cramped towards the end in my calf, not from any effort, because obviously didn't even use my legs at all, but it just felt like the kind of calf that I really tense up in the cold towards the end, and it felt as if it was cold-induced, that cramp. Fortunately, I managed to shake it off and could finish my workout, but it's difficult, and you need to practice that. And I think today it was around 14 degrees Celsius, so 57 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm still looking at 2 or 3 degrees colder on race day. So adapting to that will be crucial. I'm in Helsinki, of course, now still. Simon is in the UK, and in the lakes there, I think that it's still quite a bit warmer. So I suggested to him this today. I messaged him and said that you better start doing some cold shower training to prepare for that cold, because it's going to be cold. And that's, honestly, it could be a great thing to do if you are preparing for a cold race and you don't have those same cold temperatures to train in. For the run, trails, and race-specific training, even if a lot of the runs had some sorts of efforts, as I said, for example, they might be something like 6 times 5 minutes with a 5-minute easier jogging in between, and there are no specific zones or anything, but zone 3, even low zone 4 maybe. They are done on trails a lot for me to develop the technical skills required, but also to build even more specific strength. And even though the race doesn't have any big hills to climb, you're constantly going a little bit up and down, up and down, up and down on rocks, in the woods, and wherever really. So it's a strength race, and I'm trying to prepare for that as best as I can by getting in as much elevation as possible. Hills are all our friends. Even if you are running flat races, then hills will make you stronger and faster. So yeah, you don't think that hills slow you down. Be grateful for them. I love hills, and I'm glad that I will have more of them soon when I move. So that's another key point on the run. Other than that, nothing really to talk about for the run part of the program. It is, I did one speed run, the 8 times 1K with, I forget how long recoveries I had. Probably, I don't know, they weren't too long, maybe 2 minutes or 90 seconds. And that was a really good workout. I did that on gravel roads mostly. So there is a place for not running on trails, for sure, when you want to really get that physiological adaptation of running fast and really getting your heart rate up, because that might in some cases be more difficult on trails. So I'm not saying that you should run only on trails, definitely not, but those more high-end, top-end run workouts might be better done on roads. But what I did was I still picked a hilly route so that I could get that strength work in, and also somewhat prepare technically, because running downhill fast requires some technical skill, and that's always good to train for. Then the swimrun workouts, some of them, as I said, include harder segments, again, fartlek style intervals, and a lot of focus is put on transitions, obviously. I'll talk a little bit about that later, but in the race, we'll be doing 36 transitions, so half of them would be run to swim and half the other way around. And let's say we lose 20 seconds each time with slippery rocks and all the equipment that you need to take care of. It's easy enough if you're not prepared to lose those 20 seconds each time, and that's already 12 minutes, so it's super important. And also, finally, a very important thing in those swimrun workouts is to practice nutrition intake as well. And I'm doing that, but one thing that I find difficult is hydration, because you can't really carry around any water, and the places where I can do swimrun workouts, there really is no good solution. I could, I guess, leave some water bottles somewhere, but since there's so many people moving around there, I'm not sure if I want to. Maybe I should just give it a try and see whether somebody takes them or not. I guess I should stop making excuses and actually do that. So this was a good takeaway for me from recording this podcast, that I'll try to do that next time. But so far in my swim runs, I haven't been practicing hydration really, and that's a big mistake, I think. Although, that being said, in the race that we'll be doing, the aid stations are very few and far between. I think there's 5 of them, and just 2 or 3 of them are manned. The rest are unmanned. So you can leave your bottles and your nutrition on those unmanned stations. But still, with 5 aid stations on 50 Ks of swimming and running, or 41 Ks of running and 10 of swimming, or something like that, then you're looking at 10 kilometers between each one. Last year, me and my partner did this race in just below 9 hours. I think that me and Simon can get to maybe 8:30 or somewhere below 8:30-ish. I'm pretty sure that we can do that. But still, that's, let me think, an hour and a half or more, an hour 45 between each aid station. So that's a long time to be without hydration, especially if the air temperature is high, which it might be, even though the water temperature is cold. So that's a challenge, but it will be a challenge on race day as well. That's about it for the program overview, and I think that we also covered in good detail the need for and how to do race-specific training. Obviously, regarding race specificity, you need to do the research for your goal race and find out what that's like in terms of terrain, segments. So with that, I mean how many, how long, how short segments you have, temperature, water conditions, are there any currents, and so on, to base your race-specific training off of that. And also, but you need to obviously work with what you have where you live if you are traveling for a race. So for technical skills and equipment, let's put them together a little bit and discuss them again from a trail running and transitions and a swim with paddles point of view. So first, for trail running and technique, there's nothing that will help you as much as just get out on those trails and run and have fun, because I love it. I actually find this swimrun training to be super fun, and it's a great break from a year of really good, solid triathlon training, which I've been loving as well. But now, with the culmination of the Nationals a couple of weeks ago, I'm so happy to be doing something a little bit different and mixing it up for a while, and still training and moving about and staying fit, but in a different way. So yeah, go get out on the trails and run. But there is one key piece of technique advice that I want to give you, which is, because I also have a bit of a trail running and sky running background, and that tip is to keep your gaze up and ahead, and don't look down at your feet or just in front of them, because you will be feeling as if you're running so much faster, even if you aren't. You're running much slower when you look down close to your feet. You should be learning, when you practice keeping your gaze up and ahead, you will learn to memorize the way that you will put down your feet, even if you're not looking at them, even on the most gnarly and rocky and rooty terrain, the way that we actually have here. Just like, let's compare to an alpine skier that memorizes the course exactly every single turn. So that's my one key piece of technique advice for trail running. As for transitions, starting with running to swimming, start by pulling up your zipper and maybe even your wetsuit altogether if you have pulled that down completely, or on your upper body, obviously, when you're running, which some people do for longer run segments in hot weather. But you start to pull up your zipper or your whole wetsuit as you approach the water. And in training, you will need to learn to see what kind of distance you need for that, to not waste any more time, to be kept standing and doing that, because that is easy enough to do running. And you have a zipper on your front of your swimrun suit, so that's easy. put on your goggles and ideally your paddles, but that depends a bit on the entry point. For really difficult entry points, you might need to put on the paddles only as you get into the water. And then coordinate with your partner. You need to give each other confirmation that you're both ready to go. And I think it's smart also to let the leading swim partner enter the water first, so that you should know who's the stronger swimmer. And he will be the one, or she will be the one, who enters the water first. And that will help you coordinate with each other. And for swimming to running, as you approach the exit of the swim and touch the bottom or the rocks or whatever you will be climbing up on, the first thing that I do is to quickly pull up my goggles to see better, because these exits are usually, you need to climb and it's tricky and it's rocky and you can easily fall and get yourself a big dash on your calves or your shins or wherever, and you can hurt yourself if you're not careful with your footing. So I remove the goggles to see better, and then I remove the paddles to be able to use my hands. And there is one paddle trick that I read about that I haven't used yet, and that is to attach an extra strap that is much larger to the paddle, so that you can keep the paddles just dangling across your wrists or even your arms. So you don't need to have them on your hands, but you don't need to have them in your mouth either to keep your hands free. You can have them on your arms, for example, with that bigger strap that you have attached as you exit the water, and then even as you're running. And the buoy, for me, I've attached some elastic bands from the buoy. I drilled holes in the buoy and tied some elastic bands to it. And that means that I can have a race belt over my swimrun suit and attach that buoy or those elastic bands around that race belt and snap it all together. So it's safe there, and it will just hang by my side as I'm running. And then as I move into the swim part or into the water, I will just take the buoy, grab it, and I don't need to remove it from the race belt. It's always there, but obviously since it's hanging around those elastics, I just put it between my legs and start swimming. And I'll have links of that in the show notes so that you can see what I'm talking about. And then without stressing, so when you exit the water, you just obviously, you take the buoy and throw it around to your side or your back on that race belt, and it's out of the way. Easy enough. Then without stressing, but as quickly as you can, you just get on with climbing out of the water. Check that your partner is with you and start running. Pull down the zipper or even the entire upper of the wetsuit as you go. If it's a long run segment and it's hot in the air temperature, then I think that pulling down the entire upper of the wetsuit is the way to go. Remember, obviously, to fuel as you're running, because you can't do that when you're swimming, and you need to be, if you're going to be out for some of these races, as Åland Swimrun, which we're entering, is almost 9 hours, then you need to fuel and you need to be very diligent with it. So that's super important. Do that on the run and get into a routine of doing it every 15 minutes or so that you have that routine that you stick to and don't fly by the seat of your pants. One more thing about my training that I've almost forgot to mention is that in my course sessions that I've been continuing to do diligently 4 or 5 times per week, so I practice what I preach, as you may notice, I've been adding a new thing, which is stretch cords for doing swim-specific stretch cord strengthening. I do 3 times 50. And that's quite a lot. And if you stand with the stretch cords stretched out far enough in front of you, it adds quite a lot of resistance. So it's a really good workout. And I think that has something to do with the fact that I've adapted so quickly to swimming 4K swims with my paddles and not having my shoulders be toast as I just described previously. And that's something that a friend of the show, Jerry Rodriguez from Tower 26, is a big fan of. And throughout the swim training period or swim training year, he prescribes doing those 3 times 50, 3 times 60 stretch cords before every swim workout. And I'm just now starting to do it myself, but doing it as part of my core training instead of as part of swim training, because I just find that it's more convenient that way. So I think that's about it for this episode on how to train for swimrun. I hope that you learned something, and obviously how to train for swimrun is a rather large topic. It's like having an episode on how to train for a triathlon. What does that mean? Is it for an advanced or beginner Ironman or sprint? It's difficult, and we've just scratched the surface, but I think that this might be a useful case study for anybody interested in trying swimrun, and I'd encourage you to do so because it's a fantastic sport. And I got to say a big thank you to All in Swimrun, who invited me and Simon to their fantastic event. And we'll do a post-mortem podcast from it as well, and be active on social media from it so that you can follow us there. Also, big thank yous to Icebug for providing swimrun shoes and Colting wetsuits for swimrun paddles. And I was lucky that these were my first choices for equipment providers based on reviews that I found on World of Swimrun. It's a website, and so they found that the Icebug Acceleritas swimrun shoes were the best of all swimrun shoes, and the Colting paddles were the best paddles for swimrun. So I just contacted them and asked if I could try their products, and they agreed. So big thank you to Icebug and Colting wetsuits. You can find the show notes for today's episode on thattriathlonshow.com as usual. And remember that that's where you will find this program that I just described that I'm using to train for swimrun that you can download for yourself. And you can contact me and send me questions on michael@scientifictriathlon.com, and that's Michael with a K, or tweet me on Twitter. My handle is @SciTriat. I'm not actually quite sure yet what Thursday's episode is going to be about. I have a couple of ideas, including, for example, the benefits of training in the morning, backed by science, or how to train with RPE and how useful it can be when done right, but how easy it is to get it wrong. RPE being rating of perceived exertion. So those are a couple of ideas. Then we will have an interview or a chat actually with a fellow Stride user and advocate out there. And we will have in the not too distant future the first ever repeat guest on That Triathlon Show. So do send me your guesses for who that may be on email to michael@scientifictriathlon.com, and the winner will get a shout out on the show. I don't have anything more fancy to give out, but hey, that's it's just a fun contest. Thank you as always for listening. I really, really appreciate you tuning in every Monday and Thursday. Keep training smart and keep loving triathlon.